Welcome back to Fund Your Future with DRS. Once again, if you listened to our last episode, we're flipping the script a little bit and having our hosts be interviewed. So we invited Christine, a former guest, onto the podcast to interview Jenny and I. This actually comes as a listener request. I'm not sure if Christine is aware of that, but a frequent listener of the podcast, Adam, requested that maybe we get to know the hosts a little bit better. So appreciate that suggestion. And I'm going to turn the microphone over to Christine and let her ask whatever question she wants. And I'm a little scared.
Thanks, Seth, for bringing me back to ask you questions. It's nice to be on this side. I would like to start with what brought you to DRS and eventually to co-hosting this podcast.
What brought me to DRS? I was unemployed for 9 months. Yeah. My wife and I moved from Spokane to the greater Olympia area. She had a job lined up in the school district, and I had no idea what I was going to do with my life. But I thought I'd probably be able to get a job for the state somewhere. And it was actually a pretty scary time in my life because it was the first time I hadn't worked in, really since graduating from college. Though right when I graduated from college, I also had a very scary not having employment and figure out what you're going to do with your life. But yeah, it took about 9 months before I got a job and applied at a bunch of different state agencies. Didn't even know DRS existed, even though I lived across the street from the office at the time. And I've always been interested in retirement as a subject. And to learn that this organization existed, I was really excited when I had the opportunity to apply and then interview and then learn a little bit more about what the organization did. So yeah, the second question, what brought me to the podcast? I'd worked for DRS for, 6 or 7 or 10 years at the time. And we just hired a new communications person, Jenny.
Yeah.
And one of her first assignments was to interview me. I had started a new role in the organization. And we met at a coffee shop and she just started asking me questions about what I do and what I'm interested in the agency. And very quickly, we started talking about our own personal finance. And Jenny was telling me about her Roth IRA and what she was invested in and what sort of apps she used for tracking her spending. And just realized there was something there that having those sorts of conversations has always been something I've been interested in. And Jenny was just very comfortable in having those sorts of conversations as well. I could ask her questions and she could ask me questions. And everybody takes credit for who came up with the idea of the podcast. Our former director, I think our communications director, we all take a little bit of credit for it. But the original idea is we were just going to do 8 episodes.
Ever?
Yeah, we were just going to do 6 or 8 episodes. We had scripted out a couple of things about personal finance, really, just about budgeting and savings. And that was the idea. We just wanted to have more conversations about money. And we started, and Jenny had the idea of bringing on a guest at one point, and it kind of took off from there.
Were you surprised by the reception to the podcast?
Yeah, I continue to be surprised by the reception of the podcast anytime we get emails from listeners who ask questions about their own retirement. But I think people are really curious about retirement as a subject. And our goal with this really has always been just to have more conversations about money, get rid of the taboo about talking about money.
Yeah.
I know you and I have worked together in the office for 15-ish years, and I think some of our very first conversations were about money.
I was trying to think back to if we ever haven't talked about retirement planning, and I'm not certain. But going back to what brought you to DRS, you said you've always kind of had an interest in retirement.
Mm-hmm.
How does one become interested in retirement if it's not something they're kind of engaging with at that point at such a young age?
Oh, gosh.
How did you specifically, what brought you to become interested in retirement? Because I think I shared with you, I didn't think about it till I worked at DRS.
Yeah. It's what I was talking to a guy in our office about this last week. Shout out to John. That oftentimes for people, I think it's seeing a compounding interest calculator, which is weird. But it's like seeing the power of money, the power of money and time. And if putting away a little bit of money over a long period of time and the opportunity for that to grow with investments really can turn a light on for people. And I distinctly remember when I was 22 watching a presentation from a financial advisor in our college dorm. And I said, oh, that's interesting. I don't know what I'm going to do with my life right now, but I've got some disposable income, not a lot, but a little bit. And there's this, at the time, like kind of a thing that was brand new, Roth IRA. And I was like, well, let's go open one of those and see what happens. I mean, I started saving pretty aggressively, in my early to mid 20s. That was what just triggered for me. But even before then, I was interested in the topic of not working.
Right. Yes. Um,
Yeah.
I think that's why the conversation comes up so often sometimes with you is because as long as I've known you, you've been so focused on planning and working towards your plans for the future. Was it some of those early presentations and introductions to retirement that led you to kind of, if you don't mind my saying, your frugal way of living so you could plan for your future?
Yeah, appreciate your kind words with frugal and not cheap. But I generally, consider myself a pretty frugal person, though one of the things I frequently tell people is that I am probably the least frugal person in my family. Uh,
That's fascinating, actually.
yeah, I have two younger brothers, and one of them, for a quarter in college, lived in his van. Not necessarily to save money, it was just kind of a social experiment for him to figure out how cheaply he could live. And that sort of, I think, mindset has always been interesting to me. I try to also realize that I've had a lot of advantages as well in life, and that my parents helped me with college. I worked through school as well, but didn't have to worry too much about like student loan debt or things like that. So
Right.
it gave me a lot of flexibility when I graduated college, and I've always been a person who's been okay being behind the times a little bit,
Yeah.
like, and also just being different. This came up with my family not too long ago, but that I was just really comfortable being uncomfortable, or trying to be different or unique and not worry if people saw that I had different color hair, painted fingernails, or wore weird clothes. But I think that also made me okay with like not driving a new car,
Yeah.
or riding my bicycle to work instead of driving to work. I feel like I generally tend to question cultural norms. And that was the thing that really stood out. Like when my wife and she was in grad school and we were kind of getting into our first real jobs or in careers. And we saw a lot of our friends and former classmates buy new cars,
For sure.
like as soon as they had a steady income, because you can get a loan on that.
Right.
They know what your paychecks are going to be. It was more confusing, I think, initially. And that really helped, I think, reinforce to me just like sometimes my different mindset in those topics can be really helpful for my future finances.
Two more questions that you don't have to answer if you don't want to, and then I'll move on. But out of curiosity, how long did the van living last for your brother?
It was definitely for 3 months. There's a term in personal finance called house hacking.
Yeah.
Where you buy a house and you live in the garage, or you buy a duplex and live in the other half. And that brother specifically has always been interested in those sorts of things, ways to sort of accelerate your finances. The living in the van was for a couple of months.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then I'm just curious because you talked about cars as an example. How many cars have you owned in your adult life?
So I'm in my mid-40s. I actually owned the van before my brother lived in it. That was my
Okay.
my first vehicle, and I traded it for a computer for him. He gave me a computer, and I gave him the van.
That's a good trade.
I think my wife and I, between the two of us, we've owned 4 vehicles now.
Mhm.
For a good portion of our life together, we only had one vehicle between the two of us.
Right.
Which I know you're aware of.
I just was curious how many because I really don't I'm not a car person.
Yeah.
I don't enjoy driving, but I like getting somewhere quickly.
Yes.
I've never had interest in cars, and I really have a hard time looking at the cost of them and wanting to pay it.
Yeah.
So I was curious where your number landed in car
Yeah.
owner.
We had the one car for almost 20 years. And there was a point where we were celebrating our car's 21st birthday.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
You have to have people who can fix them, though.
Yeah, that's true.
So going back to when you first started at DRS, when I first met you, you had talked about wanting to retire early, and you and I recently talked about this again. And you pointed out that you've never set an age to us about what retiring early looks like for you.
Mm-hmm.
Did you think you'd be retired by now when you started working at DRS?
Yeah, I did. I'm sure I said something along the lines of, I plan on not working once I'm in my mid-40s, and I am currently in my mid-40s. So I've always hesitated putting a specific date on it.
Yeah.
And I think part of that is I've never really known what I was going to do next. I just knew I wanted the freedom to be able to choose
Right.
what I wanted to do. And I generally like my job, and I generally like working at DRS. And I generally like a lot of work I've done over the years. But having the freedom to be able to choose not to work also makes work more enjoyable. Like, that's always been my sense.
Yeah.
I'm making decisions on whether I want to be here or not every day. And being conscious of those decisions and that I could do something else, I think helps me have a better attitude about coming into work.
Do you think it's your general interest in retirement that keeps you at DRS, or is it something different or more than that that's kept you here?
Yeah, it's both. It's definitely a subject more broadly that I'm just interested in. Being able to know that on any given day, I can have a random conversation with a person who's in their 30s or a person who's in their 70s about their retirement journey and their, journey to financial freedom has been really inspiring and motivating to keep coming in. And then I think more recently in the work I've been doing in the agency, helping other people think more broadly about that, and then helping set up systems within the state that help encourage that more frequently, like automatic enrollment into the deferred compensation program
Right.
for employees. Those sorts of like retirement policy decisions, I feel I'm in a place where I can at least have influence on them. Not that necessarily everybody should be living my life or like, a frugal, or people have different priorities, but trying to help set up systems that can make it easier to save or people to get more financial security. That's important to me.
So working at really making sure the message of retirement readiness is out there is what's one of the things keeping you around currently.
Yeah. So people feel confident and secure in their
Right.
future. And being confident and secure in your future, it can make you more confident and secure in your present.
That's true.
Yeah.
No, that's a great point. Has there been a customer or a Fund Your Future podcast guest that you've interviewed or worked with that's changed how you're approaching your retirement planning?
I don't know if changed is the right word. I remember talking with somebody pretty early on here, somebody who came into the building, and he was taking a distribution out of his DCP account, and he started telling me about how he was in his early 50s and he was living on a friend's property and helping them kind of as a caretaker, and he was retired. Like
Okay.
he was sharing his early retirement experience with me, sort of very casually, like he had set up his life to work this way. And it helped reinforce to me that sort of possible future could exist for a person if they were intentional about what they were doing. I've talked to a number of customers about financial independence and retiring early, and there's some shared language in that community, and you can, if you're familiar with it, you can pick up on it, and I can say something or they can say something, and we realize we're both interested in extreme early retirement. So the favorite podcast episode that we've done for me, it was one of our generational episodes. I think we were talking to somebody who was Gen Z, Duran, who works in the office. And he was just talking about how he thinks about frugality. And we ended up going down a lot of crazy rabbit holes that personally made sense to me about like cooking and how he thinks about saving money and spending money on the things you value.
Yeah.
If you really like good food, and being able to spend money on a few quality ingredients is money well spent.
Right. In the tools for cooking.
And building the skill set. And
Right.
that takes time. But the fact that I know I can make a really good meal ends up having long-term value in my life. So yeah, I really liked that episode.
Thank you for answering that.
Yeah, I've liked a lot of episodes, but that one oftentimes sticks out in my head.
So moving away from other people's retirements that you help to shape how we help people prepare, how do you picture your own retirement? What does it look like if you think about the day and what comes after?
It definitely has changed through the seasons of my life. One thing that's been pretty consistent in that, though, is spending time outside, hiking or running. Talked about this a lot on the podcast that I do a lot of running, and knowing that I would have time to explore more. And I very much enjoy doing this in Washington, but I would also like to do it in other parts of the country and
Okay.
in different seasons at different times. Traveling a little bit, but more around exploring the outdoors. My wife and I have, a goal to visit every national park in our lifetimes, and we've slowly been picking that off. And I think that will certainly continue to be part of our future retirement. But I don't really know what it looks like, which is part of why I'm still working as well. One of the things I've been thinking about recently as well, though, I really like to make pizza.
I think I've known that about you for a while. Do you have a Sunday pizza?
Pizza Saturday. So I've made pizza at home every Saturday for the last 15 years of.
Oh, how has it changed over time?
It's changed in a lot of different ways.
Yeah.
I bought an outdoor pizza oven, a little gas uni. Not that I'm plugging any certain brand, but there are lots of pizza ovens. And over the last year, I've actually taken that to a couple of parties or family gatherings, or a friend had a end of summer bash, and I would make pizza for 10 or 20 or 30 people. And it felt to me like something I could do. I wouldn't call it a retirement job or like a side gig or something, but I enjoyed it a lot. And that might be something I would want to explore a little bit more.
Kind of like live catering?
Yeah, exactly. For kids' birthday parties or weddings or who knows what.
That'd be fun.
But I did the math pretty quickly a couple of times when I did it. And it's like, I couldn't make a living doing this. I know people do, and that to me blows my mind. But I was thinking about how much I would have to charge for a pizza. And
Right.
I do it as a way to give back to whatever environment I'm.
Well, it's for the experience.
Yeah.
And you seem to enjoy feeding people.
I do.
Which I can appreciate. I also enjoy cooking for people.
Yeah. It's fun. And it's just for me, as a person who's not always the most social, to be in a social environment and
have a task.
Yes, exactly. Have a task and maybe be a little distracted. Yeah.
What's a financial habit you're proud of and one that you're still working on?
Habit that I'm proud of is just automating savings as much as possible, especially kind of early on in my more aggressive savings. Every time I got raises, I didn't notice it. That money was just going away and continuing to grow and not be seen.
So you never had a chance to get used to it?
Yeah, the lifestyle inflation that could come with that. It made it very easy to prioritize saving. The financial habit I'm still trying to figure out is being comfortable with spending, or trying to find the types of spending that bring me joy and that really bring value to my life. I'm a big fan of Marie Kondo and finding joy. And I think finding joy in spending culturally can be pretty tough.
Yeah.
I know there are times where I get anxious or angry, frustrated, and I try to resolve that through buying something.
It's my go-to comfort sometimes that it's a habit I'm trying to break.
Yeah. And it's usually not bad. It's usually not a big deal. But there are times where the example that I'm sure my wife will laugh about, if I'm injured from running and I'm not able to run, I will frequently go out and buy other exercise equipment. Like
to out-exercise your pain.
Yeah, I have to do something.
That's fair.
I'm afraid I'm getting old and breaking down, and I need to do something else to stay physically fit. And I laugh because we just got rid of a number of different pieces of exercise equipment that I had piled up over time, and trying to figure out how to reflect on that, but also being okay spending money when it is something that I think is going to bring me joy. One of the things over the last couple of years, trying to do more vacations with my family. My parents are getting a little bit older, and like I mentioned, I have two younger brothers, and trying to figure out how we can all spend time together.
Yeah.
And being okay with let's just rent a house or whatever it's going to take to get us all in the same place.
Right.
That's what I've really been trying to focus on and get legitimately better at.
I'm genuinely surprised that you have any area in your life that you have some impulsive spending habits.
Yeah.
I feel better about myself. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. I mean, and that's why it's important to have conversations about money. Like, nobody's doing things perfectly. One of the pieces of money advice that I read a few years ago that I always really try to hold on to is that people are doing the thing that they think is best with their money. Nobody is intentionally making money mistakes.
Sure.
Based on the information they have, based on their life experience, that's the best we can do. And trying to approach money conversations without judgment, I think, is just really important.
What's something you're currently enjoying outside of work?
Well, it's always running. My boss, every time I see her for a one-on-one, she's like, "Oh, what did you do this weekend?" I ran. Like, she's learned to stop asking that question. Like, it's the answer is always running.
Do you run daily, like every day?
I run 5 days a week, and I work out on the other 2. So
good for you.
mostly daily when I'm not sick or injured. And yeah, what other things am I enjoying? I've been enjoying doing yard work recently, which is not something I always
Me too.
enjoy. You and I talk a lot about yard work and
Yes.
gardening. Yeah, one of my kind of medium-term goals is to make my house a place I would want to vacation.
Yes. That is actually what's been motivating me recently, I think based on a conversation with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was always fascinated with the idea of staycations and the idea that people come from across the world to vacation wherever I live.
Right.
Like for some reason, there is something drawing people to this area, and I should go out and figure out how to enjoy those things. I think, especially in moving to the greater Olympia area, I've lived in lots of different parts of the state, and I like lots of different parts of the state. There's almost a place everywhere in the state that I would like to do something, to go hiking or go visit a small town, eat at their local pizza place, whatever it is. And so trying to cultivate that joy, something I've really been working on.
Good. One more question for you today.
Okay.
What's next for you or the podcast that you're excited about?
Oh, that's a good question. I sort of feel like I should have talked to Jenny before I answered this question, because I always want to make sure that we're on the same page when we're doing this podcast, because it is very much a joint effort, and we each bring different things to the podcast. Jenny does all of the behind the scenes work in making this sound good and idea generation, and oftentimes I'm doing the work to book our guests, and I have a lot of relationships across the state and folks who do different work at different agencies that are semi-related to retirement, and so can bring people in. But we had somebody ask me recently if we were going to move to a video format, because so many podcasts are becoming video format.
True.
And my immediate reaction was, yeah, heck no. Like, partially because I don't think guests always want to be on video. And
Sure.
one of the ways I've thought about this podcast is I want it to be a podcast that a person can listen to on their commute, or, on a 15-minute break, something that they're just, you fill in the background in your car, on the bus,
sure.
whatever it is. Like, you don't need to be watching it. And personally, I feel like we all spend a little bit too much time on our screens. And so if I can just have something in my ears that is helping fight against that a little bit. So I'm excited to continue on in an audio format.
For now.
I think there are times, and there may be some things that are beneficial to do in some sort of video format with charts and graphs and things like that. We've struggled with that on a couple of previous episodes, and there might be some opportunity for that sort of thing. But I think that's a complement to what we're doing in an audio format. I think audio format is really the ideal way for us to continue to move forward.
Well, I look forward to seeing what comes next for the podcast that was supposed to be 8 episodes.
Thank you, Christine. I'm always excited when you're on the podcast. So hopefully you come back as well.
Thanks for letting me come and ask you both questions.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for listening, and now we'd love to hear from you. What topics would you like to hear about? What questions do you have for us? Send an email to drs.podcasts@drs.wa.gov. That's drspodcasts@drs.wa.gov. The Department of Retirement Systems provides this podcast as a public service, but it's neither a legal interpretation nor a statement of DRS policy. References to any specific product or entity do not constitute an endorsement or recommendation. The views expressed by guests are their own, and their appearance on the program does not imply an endorsement of them or any entity they represent. Views and opinions expressed by DRS employees are those of the employees and do not necessarily reflect the view of DRS or any of its officials.